Okay, this is our regular scheduled meeting on December the 8th, 2022 at 7 o'clock. And it's time I'll call us to order. And we'll ask our board clerk to call the roll of the board to establish the quorum.
Commissioner Blakemore.
Present.
Commissioner Askew.
Here.
Chairman Whitfield.
Here.
Commissioner Hart.
Here.
Commissioner Stoltz.
Present.
All right, all board members are present. Thank you for that. At this time, you do have board members an agenda in front of you tonight. Is there any modifications or changes to the agenda that needs to be made? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion by Commissioner Hart. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Askew. Any further discussion of the board? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is approved as presented. Okay, the approval of our minutes from our regular scheduled meeting back on November the 10th, 2022, held here in this same facility at 7 p.m. We do have agenda packets at the back of the room, and for those watching at home online, our agendas and our whole entire packet is also on our website. So is there any modifications or changes to the minutes or any discussion of the board of the minutes? All right, hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the minutes as presented by the clerk?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion by Commissioner Stoltz. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Hart. Any further discussion of the board? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the minutes are accepted and approved as presented. Okay, at this time we do have a couple of public hearing items that are listed. The first one by the Wilson family, as you see there. This item was withdrawn from the Planning Commission, but since this was advertised, it was publicized in the paper, we still listed that on there, but as a reference, that request has been withdrawn. The next one that we have there is public hearing on a zoning request from HVF Dry Valley LLC. Request a rezone of 61.15 acres from A1 agriculture to a PUD, which is a planned unit development for property located at 2937 Happy Valley Road, Rossville, Georgia, 30741. Tax map and parcel number 0-120-001. At this time, we'll allow the public to come up and speak and make comments on this. We do ask you to come to the podium so you can be clearly heard on the microphone on our recording and that everyone can see you. So we do ask you to state your name for the record. So is there anyone here that would like to speak in opposition of this request? You're in opposition of the request. Yes, sir. Please come forward. We do ask you to keep your comments just to this one topic.
Nathan Gibson, Flintstone, Georgia. My only concern, well, actually I have a few concerns. The original was the traffic, and I know that there's probably been a few traffic studies done already. But the other concern I have is there's already been another development approved across 2A that I think was, it has, I think 500 units coming in. Is that? 500. Yeah, 500. This is bringing in 169 additional units. I'm all about growth in Walker County. But I guess growth, controlled growth. How are we going to handle this growth? I guess in particular, what are we going to do with the kids? How are we going to handle that? The one big high school that we have right there is Ridgeland, you know, and I know that's what is that, you know, those big developments are going to be feeding into, you know, those middle schools, right, those elementary schools, and that middle school, along with Chattanooga Valley and a couple of others, and then eventually to Ridgeland. And I think it's already kind of busting at the seams right now. I don't know if we have any plans of more high schools in development. Maybe y'all have any insight into that.
Well, that would be up to the school board system, which has its own governing body. But I know they've had dreams, desires, preliminary plans to build a high school at Saddle Ridge.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can speak a little bit to that. Me and Commissioner Stoltz actually had a very informative meeting with School Superintendent Chris Jones, Principal Ridgeland, Principal of Rossville Middle School, Senator-elect Colton Moore yesterday. And they were very open and okay to this project. They said that they could take 400 more students, I think, at Ridgeland. That would bump them from 3A to 4A, which we were a 4A when I graduated there in '07, and they've since come down to a 3A.
Okay, so they've got enough room and enough staff.
And they said that they could take, I can't remember exactly, 200 plus at Rossville Middle School. And there's a college career academy vocational at Northwestern that they said that we could feed some children into. So they said there was plenty of room to move, and they were very open to it. They did have some questions about the road. The main thing they wanted to see was some road improvements and a sidewalk from Highway 2 to Rossville Middle School.
That was another thing I was wanting to address, because not only is there gonna be a traffic issue, like a vehicle traffic issue, but there's gonna be a pedestrian traffic issue. And
We're gonna have some more information on that tonight as well.
Okay.
To share some more information about how to manage the foot traffic and the traffic on the street as well.
Okay, and one last comment. I noticed that one of the outlets, it goes like right there, it comes out right there at the bottom of Cora Ann. And I know that there's a few people out here that live around that area. And you're probably real familiar with it. It's right there at that really bad curve right there.
At the bottom of the hill.
At the bottom of the hill. I really don't know what their logic is in that. I mean, Cora Ann is already kind of a hairy situation. I mean, just about a month ago, I came down through there and run into a wreck and pulled off and had to dab blood off of a dude, you know. And but back in high school, we had a buddy, you know, flip his Mustang into the woods there, you know. And just to add one more outlet right there at the bottom at that sharp curve, I don't think that's a smart move, even if this was approved. I'm not against the idea of PUDs. I've looked into it. I think that the way that some of them, you know, take care of the surrounding ecosystems, that's cool. The other PUD, they've got like trails and stuff going up the ridge, but I'm not quite sure about this right here. That's about all I've got to say about that.
Thank you for coming and speaking tonight.
All right, thank you for listening.
Anyone else who would like to speak? Yes, sir, please. Please state your name.
It's Hubert Roberts. Okay, I'd like to address that development there. It says on Highway 2, which we all know is in Happy Valley Road, has been labeled one of the most dangerous intersections in Walker County. From this intersection to Cora Ann Drive, which is a full-way stop sign right there, and it shares the exit with Rossville Middle School. It's less than 1/10 of a mile, or a little over 15,000 square feet. Translate into yards, which is my favorite measurements. I'm a football fan. Yards. Keep in mind it's 176 yards. Within this distance, there's a high school, a middle school, and a recently added development apartment complex, and an assisted living center also. The two exits from the housing complex are located directly across from the high school exit. You come out of the new apartments, if you go straight across the street, you go right into Ridgeland High School. Bad design, bad design. The assistant living center has 2 exits also, one on Happy Valley Road, approximately 50 feet from the four-way stop sign, which, like I said, shares an exit with the Rossville Middle School. The other is on Coran Drive, as he stated earlier, around the blind corner. You come around the corner, there's the exit. If this rezoning is granted, you're adding more traffic to this already heavily congested area and dangerous intersection. The developers wish to add another 169 houses besides the recently added apartment complex and the assistant living center. If you do the math, just on this addition they're adding 338 more cars to this area. That's allowing for 2 cars per household, which is a good figure. Besides, the already is adding 338 more cars to the area, besides the already completed, almost completed apartment complex, and I don't know how many apartments that is. So if you say 2 to every one there, it's adding a lot of cars to that area. And then if you put the children into the equation, the 2 schools, which I know are almost at capacity because my mother-in-law, my father-in-law both worked at them, and they say they're busting at the seams already. I know you said earlier, but that's not what I know from what I was told. And you're just adding another issue there. So if you say you're going to build a new school, we all know what that's going to mean. There goes your taxes. The rapid growth of this area is not only infeasible, it's detrimental to this community. People will look for alternative ways to avoid Happy Valley Road. The alternative way is through Mission Glen subdivision. This will not only turn the subdivision into basically I-24 from all this added car traffic, it would also turn Happy Valley Road into I-24 also. I know this is way too much development too fast. We haven't seen the impact from the already built apartment complex yet. We'll have, and they are already asking to expand with more housing, and we don't even know what this first apartment complex is going to do to the community. To developers, this is no big deal. Once they finish and move on and leave Walker County, they're done. The problem is left up to the community and Walker County to handle. Influx of traffic and school overpopulation, and that problem lies with Walker County School Board. Remember, all of this, like I said, is with 176 yards of roadway. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak? Okay. Anyone like to speak in favor of the development? Okay, yes, sir. Please speak your name for the record.
Yes, thank you. Mike Price, MAP Engineers, 7380 Applegate Lane, Chattanooga. Appreciate the opportunity to discuss this project. And so I've got Cole Murphy here, who is with RP Homes, and he's going to give a little bit of a pictorial representation. We have the site plan here first, which shows the layout, which does have the homes in through here, the 166 homes. And so with this layout, I would, again, as has been pointed out, this is a PUD. And the great thing about a PUD is that it's basically a bond between the developer and the community, which says, this is what we will build. We are held to this development guideline, this standard, this plan. So we can't go in and make changes. We can't go in and make any sort of adjustments in through here of any major modification unless it is brought back before this board to approve. So this is not a plan that we'll look at making changes to. This is the plan. It has been carefully looked through, studied to determine the plan that you have here before us. So let me go through a little bit and give some of the specifics. This particular plan located here on Happy Valley Road is in a location that really makes sense. I know that you've heard a little bit of opposition as it relates to traffic concerns. Well, let me first state that when doing a development, you want to develop closer to where your major arteries are. Well, 2A is a major artery. If you took this development and say, put this further away from Highway 2A, where you were 4 or 5 miles from Highway 2A, then you're creating all the traffic that has to go through more of the rural roads to get to those developments, which creates traffic for people that are further back within the community. By locating it here and where we are close to Highway 2A, it gets you in and out to the most efficient means getting in and out of Walker County that we have. So location-wise, this is really set at a great location to be able to adjust as it relates to the increase of traffic that it will cause. But you get right out to 2A in a very short manner as it relates to that. The development has sidewalks throughout the development. There's some 26 plus acres of community space. So you have roughly more than a third of the overall property will be left in its current state or utilized for walking trails, being able to have people that can go down and around the creek area. It has a clubhouse and pool that is located there in the front. And in developing the plan, we put a 50-foot buffer along our neighbors as it relates to the subdivision adjacent to us. Mission Glen. We also have a 50-foot buffer along Happy Valley Road. So besides the buffer that is created by the community space, we added those additional buffers and plantings in through there as well. The density is 2.7 homes per acre, which is not a overly burdensome number, especially given the amount of area that is set aside for community space. You might ask what the price point of the homes are going to be. So the townhomes, we are looking at starting at about 1,300 square feet. And they should get up somewhere around $280,000 a home. And the single family, we anticipate being roughly 2,500 square feet and being somewhere at 360, 380, again, depending upon what market conditions do, but that should be your approximate price points on your homes. There was some discussion about 2 entrances and why. So most people in a subdivision want a single entrance, one in and one out. However, if you have experience, which this county has, as well as areas in Chattanooga and Hamilton County, when we had the tornadoes came through, emergency responders, when they tried to get to those subdivisions, found that they were cut out. They couldn't get through because of the debris and just the carnage that took place with the tornadoes in Easter. So International Fire Code has come up with certain guidelines. Currently the number is right at 200 homes you should have a second entrance, which most communities adhere to. We really felt at this point we were close enough that we needed to go ahead and just have the second entrance. Is it ideal necessarily to put it on Turner Ridge Road? Well, probably it's not the best of roads, but it does provide a secondary entrance in the event that there's an emergency that a responder, ambulance, whatever the case may be, can get in and out. And so that was the main function and reason in putting in the second entrance in through there. Certainly anything that we can do to improve the sight distance, if it's removing foliage from our side, cutting back shoulders, that sort of thing, we can do whatever we need to improve the condition on our side and make certain that the proper sight distances are achieved through there. So let's go over the school numbers a little bit. So that was part of the topic in discussion. And I really did not know this until here about 6-7 months ago when we had another development we were working on and schools became a major issue. We started doing some research, and what we were able to find is that if you take information as it relates to Walker County specifically, we can actually determine the amount of school children that this development should house. And when you go through and crank out the math, and this is through a national firm that has come through and calculated this out. So I can take this and apply this to Walker County, I can apply it to Hamilton County, I can go anywhere in the U.S. as long as I have the data available to pull from, which we did. And what we figured is that out of the 166 homes, there will be a total of 69 children between kindergarten to senior in high school, 69. So when you look at the numbers of what this development will generate in terms of the number of students, it's not quite maybe the number that's fearful of maybe being generated here. You should be somewhere about 69, 70 students based upon, your current average based upon your population here in Walker County and developments. I would also point out that this development, the reason that part of that this development is proposed to go at this point is we have sewer access. So if someone has gone through, the county or others have gone through and spent a great deal, when you install sewers, growth will follow. And so we're simply following based upon where sewers were installed. If this was trying to be built on the septic system, we wouldn't be having this discussion as it relates to what's being proposed. So this is really simply following the infrastructure that's been put in place. I would also point out that given the close proximity that this development is to the high school and middle school, again, you're not having parents drive 10 miles to get to drop their kids off or pick them up from school or go to their school functions. They're right there, which again keeps your traffic localized in this particular area. Based upon the information that we got, we also see that this meets the future land use plan. So if it meets the future land use plan, we're in keeping with what the growth plan is here in the county. And I guess finally, what I would point out is given the buffering that this property has, the amount of community space, I think this strikes a proper balance. It's not coming in and trying to overly densify, it's not trying to develop every square inch, but instead it tries to strike a balance between nature and what the needs are for people who are wanting to live here in Walker County. And so with that, if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Does this represent the townhome?
It does. And so typically an objection to townhomes is when you look at a townhome, you see all garage on the front, pretty much. So what these are going to be rear alley. So there'll be a rear alley and all the garages instead will face each other from the inside, so that the single family homes on the other side are looking essentially at a front, or in this case it would be the back, but it really will function as a front as it relates to all of the townhomes in through there. And then we sort of pocketed the ends with community space to plant and put trees in through there so as to sort of block your view, being able to see down in there behind the townhomes as well.
So you'll access the garage from here?
Everything will be accessed from the rear, yes, sir.
So there's 169 units total, counting the townhomes and the PUDs, is that correct?
Single family and the townhomes, what I came up with, I see as 166, I think is the number I've got.
Okay. And out of those 166 houses, we should only have 69 students?
Based upon the current population and the number of school-age children that are ages 5 to 17, that would be correct, yes, sir. Currently, 16% of the population are school-age children here in Walker County.
So what, if approved, what would you anticipate start date and finish date?
We would anticipate starting in spring to early summer of this year. We would try to be paved by this time next year and then start going vertical at that point. And then from there, you're probably looking at, I would anticipate about another 4 years to build out, something along those lines.
So 26, 7, something like that?
About that should be about time that that all the construction should be complete, yes, sir.
Any questions?
I mean, what I took away from the school, just to add into that yesterday, their biggest concern was, and Robert, you correct me if I'm wrong, was with the price of the houses, was people from Chattanooga and taking their kids back to school in Chattanooga. So they would live in Walker County, but the Walker County school system wouldn't actually get to teach them. And that's their biggest concern, because they're like, if they live here, we want them.
Yeah, that is a concern, because the average household income in Walker County is around $47,000 a year. I mean, you can't buy a townhome or a house for that amount of money. So I see that. You guys are developing it, so you've obviously done your research, and then you could sell them. But if that's our average per capita income per house, I don't know.
I'm sure you will have some that will take their kids, but as one who took my children through private school where I lived, I would not be driving from Walker County if I was trying to go to a Chattanooga private school system. I'd be picking a little bit closer in would be my guess. But again, I don't discount that at all. I think that there will be some to be expected, but I don't think it will be the majority.
So what I meant by that, with the capacity that they say they have,
Yeah.
plus all of them are not gonna go to school in Walker County.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Any other comments?
Right, thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation. Okay, and this will come up later, also on our agenda when the board takes action. And also we'll have some more information about the road improvements that we're working on, just for what's there now. So we'll have that later in our meeting. The next item on our agenda is our section for public comments, and this is where we ask anyone that wants to come up and speak. We do ask you to set a timer for 5 minutes allowance. We do ask you to try to keep your comments specific to things that we can address or deal with here in Walker County as your local government. We can't fix things at the national or state level, unfortunately. But is there anyone that would like to come and speak on a topic tonight? Doesn't have to be on the agenda. Yes, sir. Come on up, please. Please state your name for the record, sir.
Well, I'm Jim Pope, and Shannon and I got some questions for you tonight, and it pertains to our county debt. Now, when you took office in January 1st, 2017,
Yes, sir.
what was the county debt then? Now, include the liabilities in on this too.
Total liabilities was around $74 million, and then we had to borrow a tax note of another $8 million just so we could pay the bills. And then we paid that back same year. By statute, we have to pay that back. But we were a little over $74 million.
So did it, when you took over, but
Yes.
then you say you borrowed some more, what?
We had to borrow $8 million, is
And
what's
that
called a
took it up
tax
to
note.
about 80,000, 80 million.
Yes, it would have got us over 80 million.
What is it now?
I think I looked at the end of August. I think we're plus or minus about 24 million total liabilities, everything.
Okay, so it's been coming down through the years.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What has it done since the board's been elected? Is it still coming down?
Correct. We've not taken on any new debt, nor any leases, or anything that even closely looks like debt since 2018. So even prior to the board, we've taken on zero debt. So the last debt we had was in 2018. We had to do a $1 million tax note to get through the year. We paid that back within 35 days of taking that out, and we've had zero debt accumulated since.
Now, if we keep going down, when do you think we might be out of debt? Is that your goal?
Yes, sir.
Get Walker County out of debt? How long do you think it'll be before we could get out of debt if we keep going down?
If we can stay out of trouble, and when I say trouble, bad storms, uncontrollable things, disasters, those type of things. If we can avoid those things and stay out of trouble, we have the ability to be out of debt in less than 3 years completely and have zero liability.
Okay. Well, I want to commend you for having this philosophy to get us out of debt,
Thank you.
because I don't like being in debt.
Me either.
Once you get out of debt, it doesn't take much to live, is what I heard one man said, and I think that's true too. So then we could do more things when we get out of debt for the county.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so from 74 million down to what, 20?
Around August, plus or minus, let's just call it 24 million in August of 2022.
Okay. Now that's about 50 million that we've
Yes, sir.
got out. Okay. I was just wondering exactly where we stand on that debt. It sounds good,
Yes, sir.
so keep up the good job.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak tonight? Okay, we'll move forward with our agenda then. And speaking of finances, we do have, the next item on our agenda is the fiscal year FY21 audit presentation by Rustin LLC. So if Clay would like to come forward and give his presentation, board members have some information there in front of you. So the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Board, for having Rushton for your 2021 fiscal year audit. We've been here in Walker County this week as well, working on the 2022 audit, getting started on it. Got a little bit of a late start on 2021, but got everything done before. I've got a brief presentation. You should have several things there with you. You've got a bound report. That's the lengthy, nice audit report there that I know you all read every word of. You got a couple letters there that you'll have for you to read as well. One of those letters is some required communications I'm required to communicate to you all as the board charged with governance. But then you have this presentation, which is where I'm going to spend most of my time. I know y'all got a lot of business, so I won't take too much of your time, but I'm happy to answer any questions. And I'll spend pretty much all my time here tonight, unless you have other specifics that we need to refer to the report for. But before I get started on my presentation, I first want to, as I said, thank you all for having us, but also thank your entire team with the county. A change in auditors, a first-year auditor, can be a daunting task for us and also for your team, more so for your team than for us. We do it all the time, but for them to put up with a new auditor asking new questions, asking for additional information, I know we spend a lot of time with the finance folks, more so than any other folks at the county, but we do spend a lot of time with other departments as well. And we ask a lot of questions, ask for a lot of information. Don't ask for everything. They may disagree. They probably think we ask for way too much. And it's all new. So you got different philosophies with different firms. And so I want to commend them and give them our thanks as everything did go, for it to be a first year audit, did go very smoothly. All right, so if you'll flip along with me there, a brief presentation. So the first slide I have here talks about our audit opinion. So in this bound report is 116 pages, I believe it is. 116 pages long, a lot of information, a lot of numbers, a lot of words. There's 3 letters in there that are really the product of your auditor. You've got your independent auditor's report, which is what we're going to talk about here first. It's where our audit opinion's found, so on pages 1 through 3. Then I've got 2 other letters I'll talk about later on. Other than that, everything else in this report here, as we mentioned in the third item here on this slide, is the responsibility of the county's management. So while we may assist in preparing these financial statements, they are the responsibility of Walker County's management. Our responsibility as your independent auditor is to opine upon, give an opinion on those financial statements, that they're not materially misstated, whether due to error or due to fraud. We do follow government auditing standards. Being a county, we do follow government auditing standards. And I'm pleased to present that for 2021 fiscal year, we have an unmodified or clean opinion on the financial statements. Nothing came to our attention during the audit process that would prohibit us from issuing an unmodified or clean opinion. I actually already changed this slide here, so you'll notice a difference if you look at this opinion letter here for 2021, and then we'll be issuing 2022 in the not too distant future. The opinion letter will look a little different. It won't be because anything's wrong or anything. It's an auditing standard change, and I actually changed this slide to reflect that, because that independent auditor's report, what's the main thing you get out of an independent auditor's report? Well, it's the audit opinion. Well, previously, that audit opinion, and you'll see in the 2021 report, that's on the bottom of the first page or the top of the second page. So our auditing standards changed this next year for 2022, where that opinion is the very first thing you'll find in that report. So that's not a huge deal, but that is a change you'll see moving forward as far as our opinion is concerned. All right, so I mentioned 116 pages in this report. However, a lot of statements there, probably 40, 50 different statements at different bases of accounting. But of all those statements you find there are 2 statements in this entire report that bring all your activities of the county together in one with full accrual basis of accounting. That's your statement of net position found on pages 15 and 16, and your statement of activities found on page 17. Statement of net position being similar to a balance sheet for a business, and the statement of activities similar to an income statement for business. So a few numbers from those statements. I've got here for you history for the last 3 fiscal years of your net position being the equity of the county. So that's going to be your assets plus an accounting term, a deferred outflow of resources, less your liabilities, less your deferred inflows of resources, gets you your residual equity there, which is your net position of the county. That net position is broken down 3 categories. Net investment in capital assets, which is going to be land, buildings, equipment, infrastructure, less accumulated depreciation on those assets, less any debt utilized to acquire those assets. That's going to be, at the end of 2021, $90,707,643. Next category being restricted net position. That's going to be a great example of restricted net position is special purpose local option sales tax. So when you collect SPLOST funds, those funds are restricted for what the voters approved in that referendum. Any of those funds that you had not yet spent at year end reside in the restricted net position, and other grant funds also may reside there. $7,614,418. The remaining residual there is unrestricted net position of $27,571,752. Gives you your total net position $125,893,813. You'll see there for 2021 there was an increase in net position of $13,710,801, which is similar to your increases in the previous 2 years. Okay, next slide. You all spend a lot of time, I know when you start talking about finances, most of the time is spent really talking mostly about your general fund, which is the chief operating fund of the county. You also probably spend a good bit of time talking about SPLOST and maybe T-SPLOST, which we have a little bit on here later on. But your general fund is where most of the activity occurs. That's your, as I mentioned, your chief operating fund. So for 2021, your revenues of the general fund increased $1,883,427, about 6.1%. Causing that increase, property taxes increased $685,209. Your TAVT there, title ad valorem taxes increased $538,803, and local option sales taxes increased $494,867, which is something we're seeing. I've made probably 3 or 4 audit presentations in the last 2 weeks, and really even in the last 6 months to a year, maybe even 2 years. We've been seeing an increase in sales tax across the board, especially in the northern rural counties and cities. Expenditures decreased to $1,486,246, or about 5.6%. A few items contributing to that. The largest, of course, contributor to the decrease there was debt service was down $4,231,056. The non-exchange financial guarantee was paid off in the prior year, so there was no expenditures in that regard this year. General government buildings and plant were up $555,370 due to some capital projects. Sheriff was up $1,250,072. Due to personal services, and medical services up $984,17 due to payments to others there. Next slide here, I have 3-year graphical or chart. People like graphs and charts, shows kind of some trend information. You got last 3 fiscal years there. The green line being your revenues, the blue line being your expenditures. So you can kind of see their trends as far as your revenues and expenditures. Now there are other things in the general fund I should make sure to disclose here, that revenues and expenditures are not the only effect you have on fund balance, so to speak, in the general fund. You also have another accounting term here. You have other financing sources, which would be like transfers from other funds or proceeds from the sale of some capital assets, those sorts of things. Debt proceeds, which there are none of those, as the Commissioner mentioned earlier. Those are other financing sources. Those kind of go below the line. Then you've got other financing uses, which are similar to expenditures. That's like transfers to other funds, or a few other items that might reside there in that. But for the most part, your revenues and expenditures are going to be, by and large, your largest increases and decreases to fund balance of the general fund. All right, these next 2 slides talk a little bit about your schedule of projects financed with special purpose local option sales tax. A mouthful there. But this is your SPLOST expenditures for the year. You'll note there for 2021, the county expended $3,896,042 on SPLOST, or using SPLOST dollars, all of which came from the 2020 referendum. More additional details in accordance with what the voters approved in that regard are found in the report on pages 113 through 15 as far as what those projects and specifics of those expenditures are. And then the next slide talks about the schedule of projects financed with transportation special purpose local option sales tax, T-SPLOST. Those details are found on page 116. For the year, $7,042,570 expended using those tax dollars. These next two slides, I mentioned when I first started, there are 3 letters or 3 items in this entire report that are really the product of your auditor, of us as Rushton here. The second being the report on internal control and other matters. Because we do follow government auditing standards, we are required to consider the internal controls and policies and procedures, compliance of Walker County. As it says here, it describes the scope of our testing, that sort of thing. We as a firm, Rushton as a firm, we do feel like that what you really get out of an audit is more of this right here and less of these numbers on this paper here. Not that you could hire any firm to put the numbers on the paper, because government is a very specialized industry, but many firms could put the numbers on paper, but we are very big on who does what, how they do it, controls that are in place, those sorts of things. So we do a lot of, that's what I meant earlier when I said your staff may say we look at a lot of stuff that they've never had to pull before. So we do spend a lot of time with policies, procedures, controls, those sorts of things, and we feel like that's really the most bang for your buck in an audit process. So we do a lot with those. There were some suggestions there, as you'll see: 4 material weaknesses, 7 significant deficiencies, and 1 instance of material non-compliance that we noted as far as the controls and compliance of the county. The third letter is not always required. It's been required more often here lately and not just in Walker County, but throughout the state, throughout the nation, really, as far as that goes. And that's our report on compliance and internal controls over major programs. And what we mean by major programs, we're talking major federal programs here. So in any given year in which the county expends, not based on receipts, it's based on expenditures of federal money. So any time the county expends more than $750,000 of federal funds, we are required to do what's called a single audit and take a look at, we have to test your major programs. There's a lot that goes into the calculation as to what programs we test and what we're allowed to test, we're required to test. But we do, this is compliance with the use of those federal dollars. So there are certain requirements, obviously, on most all those federal dollars about what they can and cannot be expended on. We're required to test those, and we were required in fiscal year 2021, and most likely will be in 22, and most likely even in 23, maybe 24. We're seeing this across the board. Even governments, small governments that have never had a single audit before, are now being required to have them just simply because of the CARES Act, the American Rescue Plan Act, and some of those funds where those federal dollars are trickling down to local governments. So we did perform a single audit for 2021, and I'm pleased to present that we had no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, and no material noncompliance in relation to the federal programs of the county. One other thing we like to do, or try to do a good job of as a firm, is to keep you all as a governing body abreast of the changes that are coming in relation to accounting for county funds. And there are some of these that are heavily impact the governments, and some of them that do not. Had I been your auditor for several years, this would not that you've not heard of this before, because I'm sure you have, but this first one here we're going to talk briefly about is one that I've presented no less than 20 times on, probably over the last 8 years. It seems like 20 years we've been talking about this standard. But it is a very big standard, a big change that's coming in the year in which you're in right now. I'm actually working with the June 30 fiscal year end county, cities, and authorities were required to implement this. This was, as it says, they're effective for governments that began their fiscal year after June 15th of 2021. Now that was a postponed date. Originally that would have been required implementation about 3 or 4 years ago, but because of COVID they postponed this implementation, with this being such a large standard. So I say that to say right now I'm in the middle of presenting and working with a lot of June 30, 2022 clients. So they've been implementing this. And I'll tell you, it has been some work involved with this implementation as far as 87 is concerned. So GASB statement number 87 is leases. It's changing the way we account for leases. As you probably likely know, currently, before this implementation of this standard, you account for a lease either as an operating lease. In an operating lease, if you're the lessee, in this case, you're leasing the asset or the machinery or whatever it is from an organization or from an entity, then you book for accounting's sake, you basically record rent expense is what you're doing for an operating lease, and then of course your cash, you pay the cash, and you're booking rent expense, and that's all there is to it. No balance sheet activity, no liability. If you have a capital lease, currently and there's 4 criteria to determine whether it's capital or not, then you would book a liability for that and book an asset that you'll amortize or depreciate over a useful life. Oftentimes vehicles, those sorts of things are done through capital leases. So that's the way we currently do it. Moving forward with GASB 87, in the fiscal year in which you're operating right now, there no longer will be 2 ways of accounting for leases. Sounds like it's going to be much easier. Oh, they're taking 2 options away, we're going to have 1. Unfortunately, that's not the case. It's moving from 2 options, and those copier leases, those operating type leases you have, if they meet the criteria, the definition of this lease, are now going to be required to be accounted for more similar to a capital lease. So you are going to have a liability. You are going to have what they call an intangible right to use asset that will have to be amortized over the lease term. So pretty significant impact there for many governments. Now, I say all that to say materiality is a factor. So if you've got a copier lease is a great example. A copier lease, a small copier lease for a county this size, most likely would not materially misstate the financial statements if it was not capitalized, so to speak. We use that term, that's really not the correct term, but if you didn't book that liability and just continued to pay that expenditure and didn't follow this guidance, they do tell you in this material, you're not going to go through jumping through all these hoops to record this if it's not materially misstating the financial statements. So we found, with a lot of history here as far as these junior ends I'm talking about, that many counties we've worked with we haven't had to book a whole lot of these leases. We've booked some, but not an extreme amount. And there's a couple of considerations there. When you start talking about materiality, you have to evaluate that one individual lease we're talking about. But let's say you got 10 of them. Well, you evaluate each one individually, but the 10 of them combined and the aggregate also have to be evaluated. So if the 10 of them are material, then you still have to record. And this applies on both sides. So it can be items that you all, as a county, are leasing from someone, so a piece of equipment, a copier, a vehicle, whatever it may be, land. But it can also be the other side, where the county is acting as a lessor, where you are leasing to someone else. So if you've got a building you're leasing, if you've got some land you're leasing, equipment you're leasing, that would also apply. In that case, you'd book a lease receivable rather than a liability, and a deferred inflow of resources not to get too, almost like an unearned revenue, so to speak, deferred revenue. So that's something to consider, and those are the ones that we're finding are oftentimes material or can be material, and you don't realize it. Cell tower leases sometimes on water tanks or on land, county land, where you're getting $3,000 a month with a 3% annual increase over a 5-year period with 5 additional 5-year terms to extend. Those are 25-year leases that have an inflation factor in them that become material in a hurry. Other factors that factor into it, termination options. There's ways in and out of these leases, recording these, but a lot to consider here, and I want to make sure you're aware of that. That is in this current fiscal year 23, that you are operating in right now, that'll have to be implemented. So some work ahead in that regard. And I'll quickly touch on the next one. It's got a lot more words on it, but it's really almost the same thing, but a little different. So the next one's GASB Statement number 96, which is what we're calling, or the common term is SBITAS, S-B-I-T-A-S, which is Subscription-Based Information Technology Arrangements. And so what those are, they're accounted for almost identical to what I just mentioned with leases, where you've got a right to use an asset and a liability that gets recorded. But what we're talking about, as you all know, probably even from your own home activities, most software or information technology items you're buying these days, you no longer can go to Best Buy or to Walmart or whatever and get the disc and come home, put it in your computer, and put that on your computer, and then you give it to your wife or husband, they put it on their computer, and then you give it to your neighbor and they put it on their computer, and we've all got this software that we paid $169 for. Those days are ending now. You now go online and you buy a subscription to use that software, and you pay a monthly fee or an annual fee or a quarterly fee, whatever it may be, for that software. So that's what we're talking about here. These are subscription-based arrangements in which you are buying the use of this intangible asset, so to speak. And it don't have to be software necessarily. Any information technology that's bought on a subscription basis would be accounted for the same we just talked about with leases. So this one is also, this one is required for September 2023, which will be the next year. So they don't give us much break there. We'll be back in the same mindset as far as implementing that one's concerned there in 2023. But it is real similar, so we'll have have our training wheels off on how to account for these things by that time. I'm happy to answer any questions you all have. And
Yeah, let me ask you one question on this
Sure.
Gatsby 87 on
Yes,
these
sir.
leases. Is this primarily situations where maybe a local government buys 30 police cars and $30,000 apiece, and all of a sudden you've got this $900,000 liability out there that I guess previously has not been recorded on the balance sheet as a liability? Is that correct?
Could be. So if it is a financed purchase, so oftentimes with police cars, with fire trucks, with any type of vehicle, large machinery like that, those would have previously already been on the balance sheet and they would be recorded as a capital lease already. So there would already be a liability there. There would already be an asset that's being amortized or depreciated over the useful life of the asset. In the case of 87, if it's a financed purchase, and what I mean by that is it's true, you're calling a lease, state of Georgia, the 1 year, contract, can't extend beyond one year. They're often considered to be leases, but they're really just finance purchases. They're almost like a note at the bank. In that case, if it's a finance purchase, those would not be applied here on 87. They would just continue to be they are. Now, you may have to change what they're called because they really should have not really been called leases to start with. They would really be notes or finance purchases payable. But there are police car instances where that would be the case. They wouldn't be recorded. I know you all have probably been approached or looked into the Enterprise program where Enterprise leases a fleet of vehicles and you're paying a monthly or annual quarterly amount. In those cases, typically those wouldn't meet the definition. Previously, it'd be capital leases. They'd be operating, which was the I guess appeal to those to start with. So you don't have these big liabilities. You don't have these big assets to be recorded and advertised. In that case, that would apply. We are seeing.
That's what I was driving to. I'm glad you clarified that because I know there was a big push about that, trying to get local governments to do some of these vehicle leases so it did show up on your balance
That's
sheet
right.
as a liability, which we haven't done and had no intentions to. But I was just trying to bring some clarity that they're trying to capture those things because they truly are liabilities.
That's right. Just like 2015 when you had GASB 68 came about and 75 a couple years later regarding the pension and OPEB. When you had to record those those defined benefit pension plan liabilities,
Yes.
and those other post-employment benefit liabilities, that's truly a sunset liability out there that you're going to have to pay for those liabilities that weren't previously on the books, and they required that. So yes, that would be the goal here, I think, for this is you truly get a picture of what your liabilities can be.
And one thing, just for everybody here and everybody watching for clarification, where we're talking about the debt service being down $4,231,056, and the accounting term is used as non-exchange financial guarantees, that was paid off. That was the debt that we had, the final payment that year for the Erlanger Hutchison debt. And so that was paid off in full. And so that was done in the prior year. So when that's paid off, then we don't have it the next year, so that's why it's showing the debt service payment was down $4.2 million.
It doesn't mean you weren't paying your debt.
Right.
I should fully disclose. It don't mean you're paying less debt off this
Yeah.
year. It just means that one was paid off last year. So the natural principal and interest, and really any debt you have, you're going to pay. You should be paying really more toward the principal if it's just based on the pay down, just because you're paying less to interest as you pay more down, so more goes to principal. But that debt service number we're talking about is principal and interest. So,
And that particular debt was principal only. We
Principal.
negotiated a principal only
for that
settlement.
yes, sir.
Any questions on the board?
No, sir.
One question, under
Yes, sir.
general fund, under expenditures, medical services up 980,417. Is that health insurance or?
That's the payment for the emergency service, the EMS.
Okay, yeah, thank you. That's typically our contract for ambulance service had been $250,000 per year. When we put that out for bid last time, and CHI Memorial come up and said they would take us from 4 trucks, ambulances or trucks, to 5 plus a supervisor vehicle if we would pay 4 years up front. And so most all the other bids, I believe, were about double that. So we had the availability of cash to pay the $1 million to get more ambulances on the road and to get 4-year service. And so we front-loaded that because we were able to financially handle that and got a really good discount by doing that. Great question.
Great question.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, any other questions? Okay, at this time, this is an audit presentation to the board, and the action item that we would need would be a motion of the board to accept the audit as presented. You're not verifying the numbers are any different than as presented, you're just accepting the audit as presented. So we have a motion to approve the acceptance of the audit.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion by Commissioner Blakemore. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Stoltz. Any other questions or discussions concerning the audit? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. And we appreciate you coming and appreciate your staff. Y'all have done a great job, and I know you've got, yourself and at least 3 other auditors are already here with us working on FY '22.
Yes, and I'll say before I leave, I appreciate you, but if you all don't let this or make this be a necessary evil at year end, if you have questions throughout the year, any of you, by all means, reach out to us. That's what we're here for. We talk to the finance team and some others, elected constitutional officers, those sorts of things throughout the year. But you all, by all means, feel free to reach out. We're here to help. So we appreciate you having me tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The audit report will also be put on our website tomorrow, so we have all of our audits on the website, I think for about the last 19 or 20 years. Joe's telling me that number is even higher than that. Oh, it's already up. Okay, so those of you that are watching at home or when you get home tonight, this current audit is already on the website. Thank you, Joe. Okay, the next item that we have under new business is Resolution R42-22. Let me find that. This is all of the zoning stuff here. Put it in here, so I'll read this aloud. Okay, this resolution of the Board of Commissioners of Walker County to further define the Board Clerk as a Deputy Clerk of the governing authority of Walker County. Whereas the Board of Commissioners Board is the governing authority of Walker County, and whereas Section 14 of the enabling legislation creating the Board provides that the Board is authorized to appoint a clerk to keep the proper and accurate book of minutes, and whereas the Board exercises the power on March 11, 2021, appointing a part-time Board of Commissioners clerk. Whereas the clerk of the governing authority, also known as the county clerk, is officially responsible for the county seal and the retention and preservation of official records, including meeting agendas, minutes, resolutions, ordinances, and appointments to boards, committees, and commissions, as well as preparing official correspondences and reports, among other functions. Whereas it would be a benefit to the citizens of Walker County to have a deputy county clerk who could act in absence of the county clerk, assuming responsibilities required to continue the operation of the office. Therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Commissioners of Walker County, Georgia, that the position of the board clerk shall also serve as a deputy clerk. Be it so resolved that despite this designation, the board clerk shall continue to serve at the will of the Board of Commissioners. So resolved and adopted the 8th day of December 2022. So do we have any questions from the board on this resolution? So as y'all know, back, as it's stated here, back on March 11, 2021, Whitney Summery, who's here behind me to my right, was appointed by this board as the board clerk. And what this does is when we have the absence of a county clerk, this gives the board clerk the ability to be here with us to take the official minutes and act as the clerk of record for us as our deputy clerk as well. So it's very common in a lot of counties to have deputy clerks because if you have changes in personnel, sickness, vacations, those type things, and up until this point, we just haven't appointed a deputy clerk, and so we needed to do that today since Whitney's the only one here with us.
And that deputy clerk would, like you said, when they would be filling the position of county clerk, they would attend to all these responsibilities that we've read out there.
Yes, and so those responsibilities of retention of the seal.
Yeah, all of those would be, if the deputy clerk were filling in for all those would be, okay.
Yeah. So there's not any change other than, just having that backup position as a deputy. Any further questions? Do we have a motion to approve this resolution?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion by Commissioner Stoltz. Do we have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Commissioner Askew. Any further discussion of the board? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the resolution passes unanimously. Okay, this next resolution, and I'm going to ask Stephanie Watkins if she wants to make her way on up to the podium so she can speak on this briefly. She's Resolution R4322, a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of Walker County to authorize a grant application with the OneGeorgia Authority. Whereas the Board of Commissioners of Walker County Board is the governing authority of Walker County, Georgia, and whereas Walker County has been requested to apply for a special purpose project through the OneGeorgia Authority with the Georgia Department of Community Affairs. Whereas the Walker County Board of Education desires to construct an agricultural pavilion at Ridgeland High School as a special purpose project. Whereas the pavilion would provide a year-round meeting environment for agriculture exhibits, civic organization meetings, agricultural lab and demonstrations, industry demonstrations with veterinarians and farriers, as well as other functions. Therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Commissioners of Walker County, Georgia, that the designated official, Stephanie Watkins, Economic Development Director, is authorized to execute and file an application on behalf of Walker County for a special purpose project through the OneGeorgia Authority. So resolved the 8th day of December 2022. And we have Miss Stephanie Watkins here, and just give us a brief overview of what this grant application is regarding.
Yes, Ridgeland High School is requesting us to apply on their behalf for this grant, which my understanding is to be similar to, if you all are familiar with the Outdoor Learning Center at Saddle Ridge. So this would be very similar to that. They're wanting to do that there at the high school for agriculture purposes.
Okay, and so typically, the school system having their own governing authority, they apply for their own grants. This one coming specifically through the OneGeorgia Authority has to be a pass-through through the county. And so this resolution would be authorizing Stephanie to file that application request. She's already had conversation with DCA. She's also been working with Karen Hughes, the principal of Ridgeland, and they have put together a budget and a plan, a scope of work, and that application's for $75,000 or is it $100,000? It's $100,000. So it's just a pass-through grant. Ridgeland and their team and the school board would manage the project, select the vendors, handle the construction. All of that is on them. We're just managing the funding and making sure the application process goes through correctly. We also did this for Saddle Ridge as well. This is just the way the state says it has to be done in order for the funding to get into the local community. Any other questions?
Just a comment. When Commissioner Blakemore and myself went to Ridgeland, we took a tour of the ag department, and it is most impressive, most impressive. They do a phenomenal job on educating our high school students regarding agriculture. And I know, Robert, you were really impressed with it as well. It was really something. So they're doing a great job there, really are.
Very good. Anything else? All right, do we have a motion to approve Resolution 43-22?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion by Commissioner Blakemore. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Askew. Any further discussion of the board? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Thank you, Ms. Stephanie. Okay, we have several board appointments. A lot of our board appointments end on a calendar year. And so the first one that we have up Resolution R44-22, a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of Walker County to appoint a member of the Walker County Animal Control Board. Whereas OCGA 4-8-23A2 provides that the Animal Control Board is an authority charged with exercising those powers set forth in OCGA 4-8-23 as determined the county governing authority. Whereas Section 6-109A of the Code of Walker County delegates the authority to appoint members and alternates to the Walker County Animal Control Board to the chairman of the Board of Commissioners of Walker County Board with approval of the board. And whereas vacancies will exist on the Animal Control Board due to the expiration of term, whereas Chairman Whitfield submitted the following appointment to serve as an Animal Control Board member: Cecilia Westbrooks for a term beginning January 1, 2023 and ending on December 31st, 2025. Cecilia Westbrooks is duly qualified to serve as a member of the Animal Control Board and has expressed a willingness to serve the people of Walker County in such capacity. Therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Commissioners of Walker County, Georgia, that the appointment of Cecilia Westbrooks is approved, so resolved and adopted the 8th day, 2022 of December. If y'all will recall, Cecilia Westbrooks has already been on this board. She was filling an unexpired term. So she was on a short term, and this would get her a full term. Commissioner Hart has spoken with her, and she is willing to continue to serve.
Yes, sir.
And so at this time, I would like to make the motion that the board approve this reappointment of Cecilia Westbrooks from January 1, 2023 to December 31st of 2025. So therefore, I make the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Hart. Any further discussion of the board? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, Cecilia Westbrooks is reappointed. Okay. Resolution R45-22, a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of Walker County to appoint members of the Walker County Board of Health. Whereas the Board of Commissioners of Walker County Board is the governing authority of Walker County, Georgia. Whereas one of the duties delegated to the chairman of the board is to appoint members to all committees of the board with the approval of the board. And whereas OCGA 31-3-1 establishes the County Board of Health in each and every county in the state. OCGA 31-3-2 determines the composition of the members, and therefore a vacancy exists on the Board of Health due to a resignation and expired term. Whereas Chairman Whitfield submitted the following appointments to serve members of the Board of Health. Number 1, Robert Stoltz to immediately fill a vacancy position for the term ending December 31st, 2023. Second, Dr. David Bosshart to immediately fill a vacancy position for term ending on December 31st, 2027. Whereas Robert Stoltz and David Bosshart both meet the criteria established in OCGA 31-3-2 to serve on the Board of Health. Therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Commissioners of Walker County, Georgia, that the appointment of Robert Stoltz and Dr. David Bosshart are approved, so and resolved the 8th day of December 2022.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to recuse myself from voting on this agenda item, please.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, so due to a conflict of interest, Robert Stoltz is going to recuse himself since he's part of this resolution. Previously, Robert Stoltz has been on this board, but as an appointee by the city of Lafayette. So this was prior to him being a commissioner. The city of Lafayette appointed him since he is a PA physician. And so he brought a lot of knowledge and a lot of value to the Board of Health, being a physician assistant. With this, the county has 3 appointments, and one of those appointments is to appoint the chairperson, which it has to be a person that is a doctor, a nurse, or a dentist. And so his term with the city of Lafayette is expiring at the end of this month. And so he brings a lot of value to that board. And since he's now a Board of Commissioners, and in collaboration and communication with the city of Lafayette, we felt like it was in the best interest of the citizens of Walker County and for the Board of Health that this body appoint Robert Stoltz to that board as the physician, which would then also immediately make him the board chairman of the Board of Health. And so also, we would be adding another doctor to this board, David Bosshart, who's very well known in our community, would also be coming on, and he is also an MD, and so he would be going on to that board. By the way this is set up across the state, the chairman of the Board of Commissioners is serving on this board as well, which is myself, as the vice chairman. And so that's just the way it's set up. If you become the board chairman, you're automatically the vice chairman of the Board of Health. The Board of Health is a very important body in our community because they deal with disease controls. They were very active, as you well know, during COVID outbreaks and things of this nature. And this board does meet on a quarterly basis and oversees the collaborative operation. This is what we would call a quasi-government because the employees are state employees. They have state oversight, state funding, but the county does put funding into the operation. They're in a county facility, and so the county has a lot of investment in all counties in Georgia into their local Board of Health. And so as these positions have come vacant, we did have the previous chairman, Dr. Smith, was the board chairman, but due to health reasons, he had to resign. And so that's why it opened up the position for our board chairman. The last couple of meetings I have filled in as the vice chairman to chair those meetings. So any questions of the board?
No, sir.
Okay. So we do have a motion by Commissioner Blakemore to approve Resolution 4522. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a second by Commissioner Askew. Any further discussion of the board? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, this is approved. Thank you, Mr. Stoltz.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Okay. The next one we have here is Resolution R 4622, a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of Walker County to appoint members of the Walker County Historic Preservation Commission, whereas the Board of Commissioners of Walker County Board is the governing authority of Walker County, Georgia, and whereas one of the duties delegated to the chairman of the board is to appoint members to all committees of the board with the approval of the board, whereas a vacancy currently exists and vacancies will exist due to the expiration of term of the Walker County Historic Preservation Commission. Whereas Commissioner Whitfield submits the following appointments to serve and members of the Walker County Historic Preservation. So the new member going on to this board would be Eddie Upshaw for a term beginning immediately and ending on December 31st, 2023. A reappointment, John Culpepper for the term beginning January 1, 2023 and ending on December 31st, 2025. A reappointment of Renee Griffin for a term beginning January 1, 2023 and ending on December 31st, 2025. A reappointment of Alan Slavin for a term beginning January 1, 2023 and ending on December 31st, 2025. Therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Commissioners of Walker County, Georgia, that the appointment of Eddie Upshaw, John Culpepper, Renee Griffin, and Alan Slavin are approved. Be it further resolved that John Culpepper is appointed to serve as the chair of the Walker County Historic Preservation Commission. This was a Historic Preservation Commission that had been inactive for many, many years. The Board of Commissioners made the decision last year to reenact this commission, and it has been super active and super busy. One of the members here tonight, Randy Pittman's on that board. Randy, wave at everybody. They are super active. They've done a phenomenal job. John Culpepper has also been the chairman. He's got a lot of experience with historic preservation and has a great passion for history in our community. And so these three appointments have all been contacted. They're all very, very excited about continuing their service. And Eddie Upshaw is very excited about going on this board to contribute as well. So is there any questions from the board? Hearing none, then I make the motion to submit these four names, Eddie Upshaw, John Culpepper, Renee Griffin, and Alan Slavin in Resolution R 4622. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a second by Commissioner Stoltz. Any further discussion of the board? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the resolution is approved unanimously as presented. Okay, the next appointment we have is Resolution R 4722, a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of Walker County to appoint members To the Board of Directors of the Northwest Georgia Joint Development Authority, whereas the Board of Commissioners of Walker County, the Board is the governing authority of Walker County, Georgia, and whereas one of the duties delegated to the Chairman of the Board is to appoint members to all committees of the Board with the approval of the Board, whereas the Board of Directors of the Northwest Georgia Joint Development Authority consists of 3 members appointed from Walker County, whereas a vacancy will exist of the Board of Directors of the Northwest Georgia Joint Development Authority due to expiration of term, and whereas Darrell Massey currently serves as a district manager for Food City and is qualified and willing to serve as a representative of Walker County upon the Board of Directors of the Northwest Georgia Joint Development Authority. And whereas Chairman Whitfield submitted the following appointment to serve as the representative of Walker County on the Board of Directors of the Northwest Georgia Joint Development Authority. Darrell Massey for the term beginning January 1, 2023 and ending on December 31st, 2025. Therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Commissioners of Walker County, Georgia, that the appointment of Darrell Massey is approved. So resolved the 8th day of December 2022. Board, if you will recall, Darrell Massey has been currently serving on this board. He was filling the unexpired term of Robert Wardlaw. He's done an excellent job. He's a faithful attender of these meetings. His leadership and knowledge and his position with Food City as a district manager brings a lot of value to the table. And so I ask you tonight as a motion to approve Darrell Massey's reappointment to this board. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Askew. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, Darrell Massey is approved as submitted. Okay, Resolution R48-22, resolution of the Board of Commissioners of Walker County to appoint members to the Limestone Valley Resource Conservation and Development Council, whereas the Board of Commissioners of Walker County Board is the governing authority of Walker County, Georgia, whereas one of the duties delegated to the chairman of the board is to appoint members to all committees of the board with the approval of the board, whereas the Limestone Valley Resource Conservation and Development Council requires members counties to appoint an official representative and a citizen representative at the beginning of an odd year. And whereas Commissioner Brian Hart and David Matheson are qualified and willing to serve on the board of the Limestone Valley Resource Conservation and Development Council, and whereas Chairman Whitfield submits the following appointments to serve as a representative of Walker County on the board of the Limestone Valley Resource Conservation and Development Council for the term beginning January 1, 2023 and ending on December 31st, 2024. Commissioner Brian Hart to serve Walker County official representative, David Matheson to serve as the citizens representative from Walker County. Therefore, be it resolved by the board that the appointment of Commissioner Brian Hart and David Matheson to the Limestone Valley Resource Conservation and Development Council are approved. So resolved and adopted the 8th day, December 2022. David Matheson has served in this capacity, I think, for an extended period of time. He's done a great job, active attender. This board did appoint Brian Hart to an unexpired term last year, and so he's very active and continues to attend and contribute to these meetings. So at this time, I do make the motion that we accept these appointees to the Limestone Valley Resource Conservation and Development Council. Do we have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Commissioner Stoltz. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the resolution is approved. I know that gets old, but that's important business and important boards and commissions and things that are very, very active and very critical to our operation of a successful county. The next item we have is a purchase order. We'll ask Chief Blake Hodge if he would come forward. This is a purchase order 2023-49 to Motorola Solutions for mobile radios for the amount of $69,333.30. This would be coming out of our 2020 SPLOSH fund. As a reminder, all capital purchases over $25,000 will be presented to the Board of Commissioners for approval. Commissioner. Chief Hodge.
Thank you. Good evening. So this is it's part of our SPLOSH project to replace radios. This is for 14 radios, 8 for the Sheriff's Department, and 6 for the fire department. These are the in-unit or in-vehicle mobile radios. This project started, there was a $1 million allocation if collected in the 2020 SPLOST to replace radios, as they, at that time, were over 10 years old, and Motorola stopped supporting those radios for repairs and equipment needs for them. So just going back a little bit of history, in December of 20, we replaced the majority of the portable radios, the handheld radios. That was $494,345. In October of 21, we purchased some mobile radios as we're requesting for approval tonight. That was $45,115, and then of course the requested $68,330 tonight is a round number $607,000 that would have been spent to date in that line item. So we're as we did last year and this year, we're as needed with these radios now as far as requesting purchases. We made the one bulk purchase, which will be for the portables in 2020 is our largest and will remain our largest purchase with this project. But you have any questions?
So these are the radios that are in the vehicles?
Yes, sir.
So they're over $4,000 a piece then?
Yes, sir. They're $4,880 a piece.
Okay.
Chief, does that also cover installation to the units?
We have a contract through Chattanooga with our system that they help us with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this is just the cost of the
This
radios.
is just the cost of the radio.
And Chief, that's gonna get us pretty close on updating most of our,
Mobile radios last a lot longer than the portables. Portables, when we have a portable handheld issue, I mean, getting to the 10, 12 years that we've gotten out of the originals, when we went to 800 megahertz system, is pretty good. It's really Motorola's, not supporting the repairs on them that hurt us. But due to the very nature of the public safety and dropping them and how rough that you can be on a portable, these are protected in the units and in the car, so they just last a lot longer. So we're not going to probably end up replacing every single mobile radio, by the end of this cycle, this SPLOST cycle. It's probably not going to be the need, but we want to, as you add, the Sheriff's Department adds units to their fleet, or the fire department has to, put an additional vehicle to the fleet or something, that would add a radio to the system. Because we don't have any, this is going to allow the Sheriff's Department and the fire department to have just a few on hand, or a cache, if you will. So we have some that if we come back, we don't have to come back and just keep asking for 1 or 2 radios.
thank you.
Yeah, so as Chief Hodge did mention, this was part of our master SPLOST plan of approved items. We do have the cash on hand in the SPLOST account to cover the expenditure or the investment of $68,333.30. Chief Hodge, do you have an idea of the timeline of shipment? I know we've had a lot of shipping.
Actually, the last ones they were pretty quick, so I think Motorola's, I think this is not an issue as far as any kind of, it's
No supply chain.
No, not that we've been told, when we requested the quote, everything was in order and they had them on hand, so I don't expect it to be long.
Any further questions of the board? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve purchase order 2023-49 in the amount of $68,333.30 to Motorola Solutions?
Make a motion to approve.
A motion by Commissioner Askew. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Blakemore. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the purchase order is approved. Thank you, Commissioner. Chief Hodge.
Just trying to make him commissioner.
Twice I've tried to call him a commissioner. Okay, as earlier on our agenda, we had the public hearing for the Dry Valley LLC request for rezone for 61.15 acres from agriculture to a PUD, to planned unit development for property located at 2937 Happy Valley Road, Rossville, Georgia, 30741. Tax map and parcel 0-120-001. We do have a representative here tonight from EXP Engineering that we've been working with. If you want to come on up to the podium, As was mentioned earlier, it was about traffic. And there was a traffic study done back a couple of years ago. We partnered with EXP Engineering several months back to take those studies and to look at how we address and deal with the traffic issues. So if you'll introduce yourself, and the floor is yours.
I'm Ryan Higgins with EXP, as he said. I was pretty excited to hear it because you don't get a whole lot of interest in traffic when you go around places. You can't, it's not a dinner conversation you want to bring up, so I'm glad to be here. You brought up the concerns with three main things that I heard was traffic, school children getting to school, and safety. And I think we're bringing to the table as engineers a solution for a lot of those. Similar to the way you looked at traffic, we take numbers, and also similar to maybe engineers, we take numbers from national databases and compile them based on number of units coming in, size of industries coming in, and just everything that's coming in. And we apply those to individual intersections throughout what we call corridors, just the length of roadway, with a lot of things going in. So as we apply those, we look at all the different types of intersections that will function in that area. We do something called an ICE study, which is a intersection something study. I don't know. It's a long study. It's an ICE study. And we look at all the different kind of intersections that can happen. We look at traffic signals. We look at roundabouts. We look at right in, right out intersections. We look at R-cut intersections, which are getting big right now. And we take into what's going to help that traffic flow, what's going to do it safely, and how other people are going to get through the intersection, so pedestrians, bicycles, and vehicles. As we look at all that, we come up with recommendations, and we give those recommendations to counties, cities, counties, states. We do a lot with state, a lot with counties, and that's what they've asked us to do. And we've come up with a recommendation now, and I wish I had a digital, that I could pull it up digitally, but I didn't bring a hard copy. But we've come up with a recommendation for a corridor that's going to include roundabouts at the intersections. It's going to travel Happy Valley from south to north, and it's going to take all this traffic, help it flow through these roundabouts, through the spacing of them. It's going to help slow down traffic. It's going to help with safety. It's going to help in right-angle collisions. It's going to do a lot of things for you as we flow through these intersections, and it's going to do a lot of things for Happy Valley. We're also bringing into this project recommending sidewalks. Sidewalks are a big thing for pedestrians. As we bring in school children, you said 69, that's a huge number. I may be trying to get with you later to try to figure out where you came up with those numbers and try to break them down even further as we look at what's going to be crossing these intersections and how we're going to get them across our roundabouts. But the sidewalks are going to help with that. Sidewalks are going to help get the pedestrians to and from. Our pedestrians crossings are going to help them get them to and from schools. I guess that's what I have to tell you, is that we're bringing in, we're looking at these things, and we're designing it from a bottom level up to accommodate all these issues that you're talking about, the traffic, the number of units coming in to accommodate these things, and the pedestrians. And I think we have a good answer. I think these roundabouts and the corridor that we're proposing in these areas, especially the high school area, and then further north, are really going to take in these developments and feed it into a feasible solution to what y'all are bringing up.
So as y'all have proposed, it would be one roundabout, let's start on the south end, right there in front of Rossville Middle School.
Absolutely.
So where you've got that kind of quirky intersection, you would put a roundabout in there that would be spec'd out to handle the traffic. And one thing that I've learned about roundabouts that are favorable over red lights is a lot of people see a red light and it turns yellow. What do? You speed up.
Absolutely.
You're trying to get through it. With roundabouts, slows traffic to work through that roundabout. And there's also a second one proposed that would be kind of up a few hundred yards, I guess, and then any development there in the middle, which this is one of those proposals, and also the other side of the road where the barn is. And then also, most importantly, is right there in front of Ridgeland High School, and that's why the driveway for the apartment complex is matched up to the main entrance of Ridgeland High School, is that you would have a roundabout right there to flow that traffic, because there is congestion there now. And that's one of the things that the traffic studies and analyzing all this, there's a traffic problem during school time before anything changed. Back when there were horses on all of this land, there was a traffic problem. And so what this is doing is it's leveraging a development or several developments coming in a school area that puts us in a very, very nice, strong position for grant funding to help support and pay this. Also, been engaged with GDOT, and y'all have also been working there as well of improvements also to Highway 2. For the Highway 2 Happy Valley intersection with additional ability to flow traffic, which would be funded and supported by GDOT. But there is funding sitting on the sidelines that will help with growth in communities, especially where there's schools. And so this really puts us in that sweet spot. And so we've already been in communication with our local delegation, and they've also been in communication with the Commissioner of DOT, who is very favorable of the solution that y'all have proposed with the roundabouts, because what we're hearing and seeing, GDOT is less favorable in most cases of red lights in and around schools because it does cause people to go faster.
Absolutely, and when the speed is a big issue. Roundabouts, to enter a roundabout, we're gonna slow the traffic down naturally with the curves and entering a roundabout, and it's an important aspect to the roundabout. Along with that, you take on the most detrimental collision type, the angle collisions, the big most people call T-bones. You take away that ability as they go around that roundabout. You simply cannot have it as you're slowing traffic, just by design. So you're doing both those things very easily.
And you guys are taking into consideration the size. I know I've in different areas I've been on these roundabouts, and I once I got the gist of it, they move really well. I know in some places they seem to be narrow. Now, with these school buses and possibly supply trucks and things like that, are we taking that into consideration? And these are going to be like maybe oversized or?
Absolutely.
Speak to that, please.
Absolutely. As we come in and design these roundabouts, we'll take a design vehicle. We'll focus on a design vehicle, which generally is a passenger car, and then you design for WB67, which is one of your regular trucks. So we'll be looking at both those vehicles and how they're going to go through that roundabout. The roundabout's set up in several different sections. You have your standard roadway, which your vehicles go around very simply. You take a car, or the big trucks that are coming around now, and they'll manage this roundabout easily. When you start getting into school buses and you start getting into trucks, they'll still be able to go around this roundabout, but in addition to what's out there just in the travel lane, you have what's called a truck apron, which allows those back tires to come off the roadway and go up on that truck apron and make their way around that roundabout very easily and move on to their to the road they want to get to. So.
Good explanation. I was concerned with that.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
So I've looked at that drawing. There's like 830 something new homes going to be there.
Yes, sir.
How many vehicles per home do you factor in? Do you figure 1.5 per home or 2 per home, or?
What's important when you calculate, we calculate vehicles, which the vehicle per home is important. But what's more important is what's coming on those peak hours. As you go throughout your day, you may have somebody may leave their house 2 or 3 times a day. Somebody may come in and or you may have some houses that they may not even go out except for every other day. Especially when you start talking about elderly and that sort of thing. So what's important is national averages that we bring in. But so what's also important is these times are spread out throughout the day. You think that everybody leaves their house at 7:30 a.m. to get to work at 8 a.m., but that's just not necessarily always true. Some people, if you live in Walker County, but for some reason you work in Chattanooga, you're probably leaving at 6:30 a.m., or maybe even before that to beat traffic. So the spread of traffic is important, and it comes down to a lot of very big numbers that crunch, and they're spread out for different particular times of day. One of the big times is morning commute. The other big time is afternoon commute, and then you need to look at lunch as well in these areas.
Well, I guess I'll reword my question. And so, of that mile or so of Happy Valley between the middle school and the elementary school, I think it's a little over a mile. When you design those 4 roundabouts and the changes to 2A there, you did take into consideration all 830 new homes, correct?
Absolutely.
Did you consider any future development where the barns are and stuff? I know there's projected development going there.
I believe we did. I'll double check and get back to you on that, but I'm fairly confident we did. I can show you after the meeting on a digital map, and we can talk about it.
We did provide that information. Also, the school system provided us a lot of great information, all the way down to how many kids rode the bus, what type of buses, were they the longer buses, the shorter buses, and even the middle school, how many bus riders they had, car riders they had. So all of that data, all of the development data that we had, this development here, the retirement facility, the 500 home subdivision, the apartment complex, all that information was provided to EXP. Dwayne Connor has been my main contact. You've been working with Dwayne.
Absolutely, working with
And
Dwayne.
Dwayne is a former GDOT engineer, and he was our engineer for this region, and he actually worked on the Highway 2 project when he was the GDOT representative, and he wasn't able to be here with us tonight, so we do appreciate you coming, but we did provide them all that information to put into their calculation model, along with the copies of the traffic studies that had already been done. Because what we're trying to solve is kind of twofold. We got to solve the current traffic problem, and then we got to be able to manage the growth and manage the future development. It's because it's already an existing problem.
So then the answer is yes,
Yes.
all that was considered?
Yes.
Yes, it was considered.
The
Absolutely was.
830 new homes, the future development where the barns are, the milking barns, is that what they are? Yeah. And then the current traffic that's there now. All that was considered, and you came up with a drawing that you came up with, is that right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And also, potential retail.
Yeah. So, do you guys have an estimated cost of your design?
We do. Let me look at the numbers before I quote here. I didn't bring that information with me, but I will get it to you.
I mean, and I can speak just kind of in round numbers. Each roundabout usually costs about $1 million per roundabout.
So $4 million.
If you did
Well,
four,
there's
you're going to be
four
somewhere in
on the
that
drawing. There's four on
range.
the drawing,
Yeah,
right.
you'd be somewhere in that range.
Okay. But there some lane expansions too, some turn lanes added?
That would be on Highway 2, and so those would be GDOT funded to expand additional turn lanes on the state highway.
And I'd like to ask, not to interfere, Brian, but just to add to that. So as far as lane additions, so y'all are confident that the roundabouts, we're gonna be able to carry all this traffic and that we wouldn't need like per se a turning lane or A-cell, D-cell lane or anything like that, or?
There's some places on the corridor, I believe we put one left turn lane right in front of that high school, where we turned in, to store, and that's mainly for storage. As you get into those peak times, you wanna be able to store those cars and get them out of the main line traffic, so it reduces rear ends, and that's
And that
what
would get out into the GDOT right away, into the
that's
state
right.
highway.
And it goes into there, it's very close, so it gets into there, I think, so 176 foot, is that right? That's it, that's what it was. 176 yards, okay. That's what it was.
So there's no right-of-way that we'd have to purchase on Happy Valley Road?
That has not been determined. They have commissioned a surveying company.
That's right. As we go out, we'll bring in the survey. We'll set our design. We'll set right now we're at the conceptual stage. So as we move out of this conceptual stage, start moving from the survey over to the design stage, we'll start realizing the right of way, any additional right of way that may be impacted.
So there's possibly utilities to move to then?
I'm not sure.
It's possible. I wouldn't expect a ton of utilities out there, but it's if they're there, they'll have to move. So.
Any thoughts on time of completion for this project? Any thoughts?
It's dependent on funding. It's dependent on how quick we get out there and get moving. The design can be done fairly quickly. But no, as far as construction goes, when it'll start and when it'll end, I have nothing to go on at this point.
So it's between us approximately at least $4 million, maybe $5 million, probably time we bought right away and utilities and stuff. And how much funding do we have secured for that already? Or do we have money set aside for that?
We can use SPLOSH money. We can use T-SPLOSH money we have. We also can use some of our ARPA funds that we have, the COVID money. And also, we're working with state DOT about getting some matching grant funds and also talking to some of the landowners as well as far as them donating right away to get the traffic problem solved. So we've had some of those conversations as well. So yeah, we definitely would come up with a solution that it would be a no debt created solution to be able to fund the project, that we would do it with grant dollars and internal dollars that we have that can be earmarked and allocated for road improvement so we don't create any debt. Good question. Anything else? All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming and being with us tonight. Okay, so on this agenda item, let's see here. Tonight was the second hearing for the application for rezone for the PUD. And this has already gone before the Planning Commission. And so this time, it would be time for the board to have any additional discussion of this. And if there would be a motion to the board's final decision for this development request of this PUD.
Well, I'd like to commend first Robert for meeting with the school system. I think that was a good move, and it makes me feel good that y'all talked to him, and I feel a lot better about that aspect of it. I would like a couple more weeks to look at this, to talk with Carlin, to go up and spend some time looking at this road and make sure we know exactly what we're getting into before we vote on it. Because we're not going to start construction right away. I'd like to know what it's going to cost the taxpayers of the county. Because you talked about different funds we can use, but T-SPLOS is not coming back. I know there's a little bit of funding left for that, but we still got some projects we need to do with those funds in different parts of the county. So I would like to look at all that and get a little better figure together on the roadway cost to make sure that's something we want to do before we rezone it. Obviously, it needs to, it's not ag property. It is on A1. Nobody's going to put a farm there. They couldn't afford the property, but I just want to make sure that we don't get into something we can't manage or pay for, be able to explain how we're going to pay for on the road. Anybody else?
I would like to. I've done a lot of research. Sure, Cole's sick of me asking him questions. Talked to the schools. It's obvious that this road's got to be done regardless. And we should have been moving on this months ago. We need to be wide open moving forward on this road. And with all the homework I've done, the great project I think it is for the area. I have a lot of background with this farm. My grandfather run cattle where this is going to sit. My dad took over that lease from Happy Valley and ran cattle on it. So I grew up on this farm, and I hate to see this farm done like this more than anybody. But I understand in reality it's going to happen. Nobody can pay what this farm costs to farm. So I think it's a great project. The road's got to be done regardless. I think we need to get moving forward on that. And I see no reason to hold these guys up or deny it. So I would like to make a motion to approve this as presented.
Okay, so we do have a motion by Commissioner Blakemore to move forward with the approval of this PUD request.
I'd like to make a comment as well. I respect 100% Commissioner Hart's concerns, and I think that they're very valid. And I also know that Commissioner Blakemore's worked very diligently, as we all have, kind of asking questions and working together. But I think that we're to the point when we've approved and we've got the growth is started there, to quite some extent. And as Commissioner Blakemore said, we're going to have to do. It's not a matter of can we afford to or not. It's a matter of that we're going to have to fix those problems up there for the growth. And I kind of feel the same way as far as. Holding, if there was going to be a major change or something that we could foresee that would be a problem, then that's one thing. But I feel like that we've moved, we're deep enough in with that whole area, the whole project in that area that we need to move forward. And time is money. Anybody knows that. And so I think I'd like to second the motion of Commissioner Blakemore to go ahead and move forward. With get this thing moving and get this information and where we can start actually earmarking and allocating funding and get it in operation so that the projects can move forward. Because as we know, some are already, I haven't been up recently to see the progress, but I know it's moving pretty rapidly. Mm-hmm. And so my concern is is not letting the projects outrun the infrastructure. So I'm going to make a second on Commissioner Blakemore's motion due to those conditions.
Okay, so we do have a motion by Commissioner Blakemore, a second by Commissioner Askew. You know, I'd like to reiterate, you know, we got a situation, if there was no development, there's a problem there today, even before anything started. And so this does create an opportunity to be able to solve an existing problem. And I agree, time is money, and we don't want this to outrun us from an infrastructure project. So those are good points. Any further discussion?
Just to reiterate also, Mr. Chair, one of my main concerns was schools, and I was reassured by Mr. Raines and his team. I was really impressed with the fact that they had already looked at the numbers to possibly pull 250 students out of Ridgeland for them to go to the Career Academy at Northwestern, where they can go as 11th grade, 12th grade, and receive valuable vocational training, come out of there, graduate, and they already have a certificate, a diploma, so that they can go right to work. And I think that will alleviate a lot of the stress on Ridgeland High. And so my fears from the school standpoint were definitely quelled after our meeting with Mr. Raines. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from the board? Okay, this time then, if there's no other comments from the board, we're going to call for the vote. All in favor of the approval of the PUD, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, this board has approved as submitted. Just a few more items here. Consider appeal from Liberty Baptist Church, request a variance for more than 6 on a private drive. The property is located at 65 Liberty Drive, Chickamauga, Georgia, 30707, tax map and parcel number 0-144-069. This has been before the Planning Commission on this variance request. They are appealing this request to this board. So those appeals do come to this board, and there didn't have to be a public hearing, but we would like, I guess, would be in good order if anyone's here from Liberty Baptist. I know y'all provided some information in the packet, but if there's anything else that you'd like to add or say, we would allow you to come up and speak if you would like. Yes, sir. Please come up and state your name for the record.
My name is Mark Armstrong. I'm representing the Liberty Baptist Church. I guess I'd read what I got here because I might forget something, if that's okay.
Sure.
Our church is wanting to sell 1.5 acres of a 6.3 acre parcel. The 1.5 acres is on a hill behind the church. It's 30 feet higher, so we really can't use it. And it's difficult to access because it's on a steep hill. The church spent thousands of dollars, I've heard around $50,000, to develop this back there. And then we didn't use it because it was too hard to access, because it was 30 feet higher than the church, and nobody wanted to drive around and all this stuff, so we didn't do it. But they spent about $50,000 to level and develop the land for a gym. The church eventually opted to build the gym next to the auditorium because of how isolated the location of the hill is. Since that land is of no practical use to us, we would like to sell the property. Our problem is that we cannot access the property from Liberty Drive because of more than 6 separate residential dwellings on the private drive. We therefore need a variance to access the property so we can sell it. The Planning Committee suggested that we could access the property from Johnson Road, but that would result in practical, difficult, and unnecessary hardship, which is point 2 of the variance. That's an unnecessary hardship. Doing this would entail selling an additional acre of land or creating an easement. And we would have put in a driveway about 550 feet. Well, you guys know what a driveway would cost by the time we ran electricity, water, blacktop. It would be more than $50,000 probably. So that's not
a very wise thing to do, because nobody's gonna buy 1.5 acres of land and then buy another 1.5 acres of land and spend another $100,000 to get so that's not likely to happen. Plus, the septic systems are in the front, and more than likely, the road would go over the septic fields. So that's not really an option for us. So we won't be able to sell the land if we don't get the variance. Also, selling that portion for the drive would take part of the parsonage backyard. These factors create the unnecessary hardship that we're talking about. That's point 2 of the variance. The church is facing Johnson Road with Liberty Drive on the side. I don't know if this would help you to see it, but the property that we want to sell is back here. This is where we can access it right now, but we can't because there's 6 homes already that are occupying that road. All we need to do is come in right here. The only other option we got is to put a 550-foot driveway just to access the property. That would cost $50,000 or more, plus we'd have to sell another acre of land, take the backyard out, drive over septic fields. It's just not, that can't happen. But, and it would just be so much easier to just come in off the road right here. It's all we need. We just need to be able to access right there and to sell that piece of property. All of our buildings sit on Johnson Road and should not be counted on those actually on the Liberty Drive. We would gladly change the address, which we actually did. We went and changed the address because it's facing Johnson Road. So we changed those 2 residences. So there's now 2 less residences on that. Anyway, so we already did change that. It seems to me the issue here is not whether a house can be built on the property, which we believe is the reason for the ordinance, as much as it has to do with where the property can be accessed. What difference does it make where we access it? It would actually ease congestion on Johnson Road, because I know a lot of times they don't like people pulling in and out of driveways on main roads like that. If we went in off Johnson Road, you'd slow down and get in off Johnson Road instead of, or off of Liberty. Plus, the county would actually get taxes from a new home. This is beneficial to the county. Point 4 of it is this, which would cause us, would we cause a substantial deterrent to the public good or impair the purposes or the intent of this article? It would be good. It's not going to impair. No, it's not going to hurt nobody to let us go in off Johnson or off Liberty Drive. It's not going to hurt anybody, and nobody is opposed to it. It's not going to hurt anybody. It's actually going to give the county money, because we can't sell the land without that access. So that pretty much tells us what we have to know, and so we request that you give us a variance. Thank you.
What's the driving force to sell this 1.5 acres?
We would like to use the money to help pay off our gymnasium. The church had problems here in the past, and we're struggling to pay a large debt on the gym. And we're hoping to put that on that gym so that we can pay our bills.
Do y'all have a potential buyer for this 1.5 acres?
No, we started to, we had the surveyor come in, and he says, whoa, you better wait. I don't think you're gonna be able to, because we were gonna, section it off and have it, but no, we're just trying to do the steps, and he told us, don't go and pay me a bunch of money to survey the land and then you can't sell it. So
Will that land be zoned if you do sell it?
It's zoned residential.
R1, R2, or R3?
It's R. From what I was told, it was
So
R.
it'll be zoned R2?
Yeah, it's R. Yeah, it's already R, I think.
R2.
Okay, well, then
Yeah.
block it off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't have to rezone it, we need to be able to drive in off Liberty Drive. So,
Any other questions from the board?
okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's in your district, ain't it?
Yeah, yes, it is. And so that, where you're talking about accessing that, is that, how far past the actual blacktop is that?
It's, the blacktop is right there.
That's what I thought.
That's basically where the blacktop ends.
Where the blacktop-
Just after that access, yeah, so we're blacktopped all the way to that.
I got
Then
you.
after that, it's just a trail.
Right. Yeah, on back in there it is. It's very narrow, very,
Yeah,
but to where you're talking about, I'm very familiar with
yeah,
that.
it's blacktop, yeah, it is.
And the church wants to use the money to pay down debt because of hard times and struggling with,
Yeah, well, COVID didn't help.
no, COVID didn't help at all. That's exactly right.
We lost some members with that, so.
Well, when the board moved the private drives from 4 to 6, this was all prior to, there were already 8 residences there, which were basically grandfathered in when we changed the ordinance. And they've taken 2 addresses off of it and put it into compliance. So what they're in compliance now, asking for a variance for 1 lot with the existing drive there, which would eliminate having a drive coming in off of Johnson. And Carlin, could you speak to that ditch, the ditch on that side? It's pretty good ditch on there as far as putting in a drive there, or what's your thoughts on that?
Off of Johnson going up to the lot that they're referring to?
Yeah, if they had to put in a new drive, it'd be a pretty, could be a. I think with all the information that's been gathered in discussion, I think it would be feasible to allow the variance under the hardship for the church to be able to market that piece of property and to use the funds to help the church in whatever way the church saw fit. That would be the church's business. But in these circumstances, I'm going to make the motion that we allow the variance for that lot. If any board members see fit for any other discussion, I'd love to.
I would just like to second your motion to help the church with the hardship.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Askew, a second by Commissioner Blakemore. Any further discussion of the board? All right, hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor of granting this variance for this 1 additional drive, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the variance is granted. Okay, we have another consider appeal from Mary Ann Word, request a variance for a 14-foot wide mobile home in an R2 zone. The property is located at 353 Carolyn Drive, Chickamauga, Georgia, 30707, tax map and parcel number 0-161-053. The Planning Commission took no action on this at their prior meeting. What's the discussion of the board on this request for this variance for a 14-foot wide mobile home in an R2, which currently requires a 16-foot wide mobile home, 16-foot wide or larger mobile home is the current standards for an R2 zone.
Hey, Mr. Pursley, you mind come up here on this? I know me and you talk.
Yes, sir. How are you?
Doing good. So you said that this mobile home's already sitting on the lot, correct?
Yeah, that's right. He come into the planning office and was turning in his appeal to come here and whatnot. And we got into the discussion and took a picture. I went out there and showed the area. He brought it in unknowing that you had to have permits for it, or was kind of unaware of the sizes that was required, which that's no excuse, of course. But I went out there and looked in the area down that road to see what else was in there, to see if it was similar situation. Of course, I think there's 6 or 7 mobile homes, 12-footers, 14s, 16s in that area.
So it's definitely not out of place.
No, it's not. It's not. I mean, as far as the structure, demographically,
12 by 68,
yes, sir.
12 by 60.
And this, I think
14 to
the
66.
one he's putting in, when we looked at it, it's 14 by 56.
So that's in the general surrounding area.
It is. Yes, sir. Here's kindly a map. I apologize for the quality. It printed off some other stuff at the top, so I eliminated it. But that just shows you his address and the addresses of the other mobile homes in the area.
Okay.
It shows you on that same block right there.
Yeah, it shows the cluster, kind of what's already there.
And so right now, it's sitting there with no underpinning or?
Yeah, that first picture is that the actual one that they brought in. He explained, he was, talking to me down there that day, so I agreed I'd go down there and look at it with him. He still has to do all the permitting. He's trying to do that. That was the initial, where he got into this bind, because he was trying to go about it the correct way. As far as the permitting, he's got to get the electrical, the foundation, all the permits established and inspections done.
And you've discussed that, and they
Yeah,
expect those,
absolutely. Yeah.
understand that those things will have to be done and the way it has to be handled.
Yes, sir, it's correct.
Well, you've done due diligence on bringing us something to, it's obvious that it won't be detrimental at all to the area. Like you said, I mean, when you've got the 12, and there's nothing wrong, it's just when you've got 12 by 60s and things like that, that's what's there.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, there's some other ones in the surrounding blocks. That was just on the main road.
That was just on,
That
that's
we
just
kind
on
of
the main
walked.
area.
That's correct, yeah, within a quarter mile of it. Right next door, I think there's a 12 by 68 or 66.
I mean, as long as he understands what he's got to do moving forward, and I have no problem granting a variance to help him out.
Okay, so do we have a motion to grant the variance from Commissioner Blakemore? Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Stoltz to that motion. Any further discussion of this board?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the variance is approved by the Board of Commissioners. Variance is approved. Okay, try to move us along here quickly. I know it's getting late. We do have our November 2022 statistical report. I won't cover everything as much as we do in the past, but I will point out on our fire department, we still have a lot of calls for services in our county, 522 calls for services that was responded to by 820 units handling those calls. One of the big things I wanted to point out is that season where we're getting into the winter, where people are using different means for heating. So we want to make people very much aware that the fire department has a free smoke alarm program that you can call the fire headquarters here in Walker County, and they'll send out a couple of our firefighters that will install smoke alarms in your home free of charge. And we'll provide those smoke alarms for you, and however many it takes to properly cover your home. And so we've been successful this year in installing 177 smoke alarms for citizens in our community. They installed 11 in November and 9 in October. And you can see the history there. We've had several hundred every year. So these smoke alarms do save lives, and we want people to call. It doesn't matter your income, your size of your house, it doesn't matter. We just want you to be safe. Single-family home construction, 10 permits have been pulled this year in the month of November, 9 in October. 133 single-family home permits pulled in the month of, in the calendar year of '22. We still have a lot of activity on our social media and Facebook page, and added 20 new subscribers to our e-newsletter off of our website. Transit's been extremely busy. We've got a phenomenal transit team that move a lot of people around our community. November 2,299. October was 2,591. So transit's a very important part of our community. There's a lot of other data on there. I didn't want to cover everything due to the sake of time. Okay, at this time of our agenda, we do have for our commissioners to make any additional comments that they would like to make. So Commissioner Blakemore, you be first.
Just appreciate everybody coming out and getting involved in your government. Tomorrow night is the Christmas parade in Rossville, going down McFarland Avenue from Ellis Road to William Street behind the Migos. There will be donuts and hot chocolate. And Rossville Middle School, I think, and there's another school, their chorus is going to be there singing. So if anybody wants to come to that, that is tomorrow night starting at 6 p.m. Thank you.
Commissioner Askew.
Yes, I'd like to start with offering condolences to Commissioner Brian Hart over the passing of his father. Our thoughts and prayers will be with you. That's all. I don't have any other words for you. Just we're thinking about you.
Understood.
Saturday, December the 10th, Chickamauga will have breakfast with Santa at the chapel behind the mansion, and then a parade at 6:30. Tuesday, December the 13th, Saddle Ridge Middle School holiday band concert at Lafayette High School. Then Wednesday, December the 14th, Saddle Ridge will be hosting a coffee with counselors, and it's about internet safety for children. It'd be real good for anybody with children. They're going to have a little conference to help us watch the children, teach them how to watch for predators online and that kind of stuff, I think. I also did want to mention that there is a new resource, a suicide prevention hotline in the state of Georgia, and that's a 988. So if anybody's having issues and need to talk with someone, 988 is the new suicide prevention hotline. It will be there 24/7. And lastly, I'd like to give kudos to the Chattanooga Valley Lions Club for their four-wheeler stocking full of love. I heard that it was a very good turnout and had a very great success last weekend. And I also want to thank all of our employees and thank all of you for participating, coming and sharing your thoughts and helping us do a better job at what we're here to do. So appreciate you coming out. Thank you.
Commissioner Hart.
Not this Saturday, but next Saturday, the 17th, the Walker County, the Board of Commissioners, also the City of Lafayette, along with Beverly Foster, has put a lot of work into the new African American Museum opened up in Lafayette. It's opening up at the old Long John Silver building in Lafayette. So it's going to be a neat event. A lot of people put a lot into that. So it opens at 1 o'clock next Saturday, a week from Saturday, 17th.
Yes, sir. Ryan, I want to extend my condolences to you and your family, your brothers, your sister, and your mom. And we'll be thinking about you guys. I want to thank all of our county employees. Appreciate the job that y'all do, the hard work, working out in the elements like you did this week. So I appreciate everything that y'all do. Also want to thank everyone who bought a raffle ticket for the rifle that was being auctioned off through the Cedar Grove Community Center and the Community Club. If you were like me, you did not win the rifle.
No.
However, your contribution allowed a $1,000 donation to the Stocking Full of Love.
Awesome.
So everybody did a great job on the donations on that. I would also like to thank this board for appointing me as chairman of the Walker County Board of Health. That is a real highlight in my career. I'm just very excited about it, and I want to reassure this board I will work hard, do a good job, reassure the citizens that I am looking forward to serving in this position, very excited about it. And one last thing, there will be a Christmas candlelight celebration December the 17th at my church, New Harvest Baptist Church. It's right across from Roper. That's on a Saturday. Light refreshments start at 5. The candlelight celebration starts at 6, and we would love to fill the church, so everybody come on out and enjoy some fellowship. Thank you.
Very good. Just like to reiterate, these parades are a lot of fun. And so we've got the Rossville Parade on Friday, Chickamauga Parade on Saturday. I know there's a great turnout here in Lafayette this past weekend for their parade. It brings a lot of community, brings people together, great time to fellowship and socialize. Also gives you an opportunity to visit and spend some of your dollars with the local merchants. That many of them will be open during these times, and be sure and remember them as you're going to and from these events, and some of the eateries and things that's in those areas to patronize those local businesses that work hard and are a big part of our downtown communities in our local cities. At this time, I would like to make a motion. We do have an item to discuss briefly in executive session dealing with personnel, so I'd like to make the motion that we go into executive session to discuss a personnel item.
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Askew. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we will stand adjourned until we complete our executive session. We will return and close out the meeting. Thank you all.
Hi, I'm Joe Legee, Public Relations Director for Walker County Government. The board has just entered executive session. This is a process that allows elected officials to discuss a specific, sensitive topic behind closed doors. These are topics that are exempt from the Georgia Open Meetings Act. Executive session topics must fall into one of three categories: litigation, real estate, or personnel matters. In terms of litigation, the need may arise for the board to consult with a county attorney on pending or potential lawsuits, settlements, claims, administrative proceedings, or other judicial actions brought by or against Walker County government, its officers, or employees. Real estate covers discussions regarding the future purchase or acquisition, disposal, or lease of property. Personnel matters would cover the discussion or deliberation on the appointment, employment, compensation, hiring, disciplinary action, or dismissal of a Walker County government officer or employee. Now, if a vote is needed pertaining to an issue discussed in the executive session, it must be taken in an open meeting. Otherwise, it is not binding. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back in a bit. Download Walker County's Siren GPS app today for Apple and Android devices and be the first to know about bad weather and other community concerns and interests.
Okay, I'm going to call us back to order. It's still December the 8th. It's 9:22 p.m. We just come out of executive session. There's no additional business from our executive session. Do we have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion by Commissioner Hart. Do we have a second?
Second.
A second by Commissioner Stoltz. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the business of this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Yes, sir.